From Tiger to Cougar, The Secret Life of Elinor Glyn. A deconstruction, reconstruction and reimagining exploration in creative historical fiction. By Arnold Kalnitsky. Arnold60sk@gmail.com. Elinor Glyn came to Hollywood at age 56 to begin a new chapter in her notorious life. And created a sexual revolution on the screen. She taught Rudolph Valentino how to kiss. She transformed the image of Gloria Swanson. She created the It Girl in Clara Bow. And she was on William Randolph's yacht the night of the Thomas Ince tragedy. Cecil B. DeMille said that she managed the paradox of bringing good taste and sex appeal to Hollywood and deserves more credit than he did. Samuel Goldwyn said that her name was synonymous with the discovery of sex appeal. And that she plans her personality as carefully as she does her stories. Mark Twain said that she came to the U.S. upon the stormwind of a vast and sudden notoriety. Dorothy Parker wrote that Madame Glyn does not flinch from plain talk. Aldous Huxley chose her book, 3 Weeks, as a vehicle for the feelies of Brave New World. Beverly Nichols wrote that it seemed that such a fiery personality should have caused only ink and not blood to flow. Anita Loos commented that she belonged heart and soul to Hollywood. That her appearance was bizarre, with her white skin contrasting with her dyed red hair and her bright green eyes. And in fact, if Hollywood never existed, Elinor Glyn would have invented it. Gloria Swanson recalled how she went everywhere and passed her fearsome verdict on everybody. People moved aside for her as if she were a sorceress on fire. Clara Bow called her a shithead. But Hollywood was her second life. Her inspiration came from Sarah Bernhardt. She said that she had a sexual awakening from her influence while living in Paris. She was forced into a career as a writer because of the debts incurred from a lavish lifestyle and the gambling and drinking of her dissolute husband. And over 3 decades produced a long string of over 20 novels. Mostly exposing the hypocritical, promiscuous lifestyles of the British aristocracy. Introduced into their circle by her friend, Lady Daisy Greville, the hedonistic Countess of Warwick, and Lady Diana Manners. Infamy and outrage followed the publication of the book, 3 Weeks. Where the scene of an older, married woman seducing a younger man on a tiger skin became an image imprinted on public consciousness. And she exploited that image shrewdly. An anonymous rhyme about that scene was repeated everywhere. Would you like to sin with Elinor Glyn on a tiger skin rug? Or would you prefer to air with her, on some other fur? The book elicited enormous popularity. Praised because she wrote about the strength of women's sexual desires. And the right to act independently as she chose. Criticized, banned and censored in places because of the affront to traditional morality. Invited to speak at a luncheon in New York by the Pilgrim Mothers, who weren't familiar with the book, she responded to their criticism graphically. She retorted thusly, "I have never seen such an aggregation of dowds, frumps, and tabby cats. Women who are breastless, slab-hipped, and pancake-faced frights. And while you criticize me, I sold 50,000 more books last week. And tabby cats are too good for you. Sparrows are more appropriate." But she also was a serious thinker and writer. The author of many non-fiction books and articles. Mostly critiquing the prevailing social standards pertaining to romance, love and sex. Carefully described in her book, The Philosophy of Love. She was a friend of leading idealist philosopher F.H. Bradley, who she characterized in her novel, Halcyon. Bradley had written an introduction to one of her books titled, On Sex in Literature, which she refused to publish. Her sister, who became Lady Lucille Duff Gordon, was also a leading figure in their social circles as the couturier to the elite of society and entertainment. Her fashion brand, Lucille, produced the costumes for the Ziegfeld Follies. And Lucy was a survivor of the Titanic, under dubious circumstances. Elinor's personal life before Hollywood was full of drama. As her marriage failed, she began an 8-year affair with Lord George Curzon, former Viceroy of India, and a leading member of Lloyd George's war cabinet. After he humiliated her, she was involved with 2 other major figures of influence, Alistair Innes Kerr, and Lord Milner. During the First World War she was active, ministering to the wounded, and writing for Hearst publications. At the behest of the French government, who were aware of her popularity, she was asked to encourage American participation. And her work, and later friendship, with Hearst, continued throughout her Hollywood years. Not content to stay on the sidelines, she asked for access to the front lines, and saw atrocities and tragedies firsthand. Almost losing her life watching the horrors of war, she began a book called Destruction, which she read out loud to American troops. Present at the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, she interviewed Prime Minister George, and wrote profiles of the leading figures. She traveled extensively, crisscrossing Europe many times, and visited Russia at the invitation of the Tsar's family. And traveled across America, years before returning for the second chapter of her life. She was part of the social circle of the aristocracy, and observed their lifestyles, wickedly noting in her novels their indulgences and infidelities. Her iconic portrait was painted by de Laszlo, artist to the rich and famous, who captured her likenesses for eternity. Paid for by Lord Curzon. In Hollywood, Goldwyn and the Lasky Famous Players studio embarked on a plan to add class to the content of their films. They came up with the eminent author idea, inviting well-known authors, mostly from England, to supply stories. Of all who came to the studios, hoping for big money, Elinor was the only survivor. And she flourished. Her name became her brand. And she eventually was turned into a non-liability corporation by her family after some disastrous financial choices. She was the first multimedia celebrity, her presence everywhere. She was writing novels and movie scenarios, advising and revising on movie sets, tweaking the looks, manners, deportment, clothing of the stars, teaching them elegance and subtleties of expression. She was constantly producing streams of writing on a multitude of subjects. From serious non-fiction books like The Philosophy of Love, Letters from Spain, Points of View, to beautification advice in The Wrinkle Book, or How to Keep Young. And she offered a course in the Elinor Glyn method of writing. She wrote and advertised constantly in magazines, endorsed products and people. She was heard on the new popular medium of radio, went on speaking tours, and was regularly being interviewed and quoted. She took part in the production of 16 films in addition to dozens of books and articles. She was the unrivaled authority on sex. But she had her fatal flaws. Seduced by Hollywood, she became fixated on making money. And her vanity and ego were in need of the highest maintenance. One of the oldest figures on the Hollywood scene, she obsessed about her appearance, always trying to impress with her eclectic clothing choices and meticulous attention to makeup and hair color. On first arrival, she said that she already felt 10 years younger. And dipping into the fountain of youth by any means was always an objective. She underwent facelifts and dental surgery as part of that quest. Her behavior was fueled by her beliefs. A devoted enthusiast over the early versions of self-help and the power of attraction, she meditated and visualized for an hour a day. And trusting implicitly that her life was unfolding according to a positive, unseen plan in line with her objectives, she made impulsive, rash decisions that had long-term consequences. She chose a financial manager because she liked his looks. And signed a contract that unknowingly gave him 50% of her earnings. She spent lavishly, assured that everything would be replenished if she visualized properly. As a single, extroverted woman, she was still looking for the perfect man. She told Gloria Swanson enthusiastically that she was glad that there were so many attractive young men who were splendid new materials for her needs. Out dancing every night at the Patent Leather Room or other night spots, she rotated through a series of different escorts. Watching Rudolph Valentino and Pola Negri demonstrate the tango at a 2-day party at Marion Davies' beachfront mansion, with her latest young man close by, was typical behavior. Los Angeles had 400 sects and cults at the time. Hundreds in the film community held various non-traditional views. Some even had astrologers on a yearly retainer, hoping to navigate their career paths. Madame Glyn fit right in. She was a devoted believer in various occult theories, such as reincarnation, cycles of civilization, and the intervention of unseen powers. She felt she had a mission to change the path that romantic behavior was headed. And she practiced automatic writing as well as having her own medium. Seances were even conducted in the Oriental Room of Pickfair. Once integrated into the film community socially, she became friends with some of the biggest names, including Charlie Chaplin, Douglas Fairbanks, Mary Pickford, Gloria Swanson, Rudolph Valentino, Marion Davies. And she was a regular visitor to San Simeon and a trusted friend of Hearst. And she was aboard his yacht the night of the Thomas Ince tragedy. When rumors of her excesses reached her family, her daughter and son-in-law intervened and broke a promising contract with Mayer, Thalberg and MGM and took over financial control. When her career lost momentum, she rebounded stronger than ever before. Now with Paramount, the former Lasky studio, Ben Schulberg was looking for a property to star his latest protégé, Clara Bow. The label he gave her, the Brooklyn Bonfire, didn't ignite. Madame Glyn revised one of her stories. And suddenly there was a new cultural sensation. Clara Bow had become the it girl. Essentially about sexual magnetism, though the definition was debated and parsed to no end. After the phenomenal success of It, tax problems incurred from previous bad and careless management, and a move back to England was chosen. She never did set foot in that little house in Washington that she wanted to retire to. In later years she revised her thoughts about her Hollywood experience, and bitterly renounced her lifestyle as a product of an occult curse of California. These are some of the known facts. But our story diverges from there. Building on this foundation we take a sharp turn into speculative fiction. Deconstructing, reconstructing, and reimagining plausible directions and paths she may have taken, based on her known patterns and clues left anecdotally. Two things in particular: the character of her possible psychic experiences, and her personal love life. The former are exaggerations built upon comments about reincarnation and various other references, both in her writings and as anecdotally recorded. Interestingly, she left no specific details about any romantic relationships in Hollywood, even though her family was alarmed at some of the hints in her letters. And others have suspected that she was more active than she acknowledged. Obviously, any stories along those lines must be speculative, though not necessarily improbable. The vast majority of people in this story were real, though a few were necessary inventions for story purposes. So ultimately this is a what-if story, with the fiction growing from the facts. And unavoidably, an interpretation of how her psyche operated was a necessary part of the speculation. Also based upon her known patterns of action and reaction. Elinor Glyn, the real person, was an interesting and important figure of her time, with influences extending into the future. This story is intended to be enjoyed as a piece of exaggerated historical fiction, but in tune with her real persona.